Well, good morning. I'm Dinah Pencunis, but thank you, Matt. Good enough. So nice to see so many people I know and then so many new faces. And I'll just start with a little bit about the State Historic Preservation Office, for those of you who don't know what we do. So every state has a State Historic Preservation Office established by the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. And, whoops, sorry, I got ahead of myself here, sorry. And we're responsible for running a number of federal programs within the state of Wisconsin. So the National Register of Historic Places, the Certified Local Government Program, where we work with local communities on historic preservation planning. We also administer for the state and federal tax credits for the rehabilitation of historic properties. We also review projects in our compliance section, so projects of federal government, state government, and local units of government for their impact on preservation. And then we are also responsible for protecting and recording our archaeological and burial sites across the state. So we do all of those things, and as I like to tell our federal legislators who approve our allocation every year from the Historic Preservation Fund, I do that with 20 people and just a little bit over $1 million federal money. So we are very efficient stewards of our state and federal money and all of the things that we do. So that's my little plug for supporting the Preservation Office. So Matt asked me to talk a little bit about the architecture of sacred places here in Wisconsin. And I thought I would start with a little bit of eye candy because we have to look at buildings to think about buildings, right? So kind of prime the pump for today. And I really thought about, how do people think about historic buildings? How do they think about historic religious buildings? And what kinds of buildings come to mind, and what role do they play in sort of our collective identity of the environment and our sense of place? And so the two examples that I picked here are St. Augustine, which is in New Diggings in Lafayette County, so a rural church from the 1840s, designed by perhaps Wisconsin's first architect, Father Mazzucchelli, who was a priest who immigrated came to serve this whole region of Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, and designed a number of churches. So these are the churches that have great value to the community, to their identity, and really thinking about the rural environment. And then, in counterpart, I chose St. Joseph's Basilica in Milwaukee. And I assume that if you live in Milwaukee, you use it as a point of reference, right? You go like near St. Joseph's, right? Because you can see that from the interstate. You can see that giant dome. This church fits 2,000 people, quite a different scale, different periods. But again, these are very important places that contribute to the identity of their localities. So then if we look at just some different eras, and again, so that we start to think about buildings, that we start to think about buildings built for religious purposes, and kind of the scale and the styles that we're looking at. So here we have two mid-19th century churches that you could find, driving around rural Wisconsin or even in communities that were, founded in the mid-19th century. So this Rutland United Brethren in Christ Meeting House in rural Dane County in the town of Rutland, built in 1852. Kind of a very typical form. We see that form, you look at it and you go, it's got to be a church, a school, or a town hall, right? Kind of the one form of architecture that's there. This one has a little bit more finish to it with the kind of returned eaves, slight traces of the Greek revival. And then in other locations, this one, St. Paul's Episcopal in Columbus from 1871. Again, another small scale church, this one executed in masonry and having some Gothic elements. But again, important places in their communities, important gathering places related to the early history of their communities. Then we move to the late 19th century. Communities are expanding, they're getting bigger, settlements are bigger, more people are coming to Wisconsin. The major religious institutions are becoming wealthier, again, more people, more investment. And so we start getting these larger scale churches, the ones that really have, if you look at those cities of spires and things that show up on bird's eye views and how you can place yourself within a community. So here we see Zion Evangelical Lutheran Church in Columbus, again, built in 1878 with an 1885 expansion, with E.T. Mix, one of our noted architects from Wisconsin, designing it. And then St. Bernard's Catholic Church in Watertown, built in 1873. Patrick Keeley, the architect here, was actually not a Wisconsin architect. He designed a number of very important Catholic commissions in the kind of mid-19th century. So again, we're starting to see these big piles that are going up, and perhaps the challenge of what to do with them, right? These big buildings. And we come to the early 20th century, and you can see there's a continuation of these styles, but also what's very interesting is that these bigger churches are also being built in rural communities like St. John the Baptist Catholic Church. This is in a rural location in Kenosha County, and then big churches within communities like Milwaukee, like this Lutheran church from 1930. So again, big churches tending to be built in the early 20th century. Then we get to the mid-20th century, and sort of all bets are off, right? Architecture really changes. There are still very, very traditional church designs that are being built in the mid-20th century, but also a lot of experimentation that's happening. And I think there will be a presentation on mid-century church architecture tomorrow. Is that what Justin's going to talk about?
Justin will be here for that.
Yeah,
That's right.
It's a great presentation if you're here. I think you'll really enjoy it. And so we have, what constitutes a church? We start thinking about new forms, new shapes, new influences of modern design. And so we have Holy Family Catholic Church in Whitefish Bay, Henry Slaby, who designed a number of Catholic churches, this one from 1969. And then not too far away in Wauwatosa, Annunciation Greek Orthodox by Frank Lloyd Wright from 1959. So kind of the church is a box. The church is a flying saucer, which is what Justin would call it. So all of these different shapes. So we start thinking about what is changing, what is the nature of religious architecture. And again, this is not a lesson in architectural history. I'm just throwing things out for you to start thinking about when we start talking about religious buildings. And again, some of the issues that are faced with reusing them. We shouldn't forget that other denominations, not just the Catholics and Lutherans were building churches. There are quite a few synagogues located throughout Wisconsin. Some of them are very, very small from early settlements. This one from Stevens Point, from early Jewish settlements, 1905 in Stevens Point, Temple Beth Israel. So again, when there were these small local Jewish communities, most of them consolidated into larger synagogues in bigger cities. So a lot of these these synagogues were put to different uses. But even the really large ones, like Temple Emmanuel in Milwaukee, is no longer a synagogue as well, but built as a synagogue at the time. And then I was even looking in our architecture and history inventory, which is our database of information in Wisconsin, and we're starting to pick up other religious faiths. So here's a building from the Islamic Society of Milwaukee, built in 1995, and the Shiva Vishnu Temple in Fitchburg outside of Madison in 2014. These are going to be buildings that we're going to be needing to think about as we move forward in the historic preservation sphere. And one of the things that Justin will talk about tomorrow, and one of the issues that those of us who do like mid-century design, is these are the buildings that are now in the most danger. These are styles, in many cases, that people don't know what to do with. They're not quite comfortable with modern design. And so here are just 4 examples that are built in the mid-century. Trinity Evangelical Lutheran in the Wisconsin Dells, which is the very traditional one, 1950. I think the general public perhaps is a little bit more comfortable with that. One of my personal favorites, St. Bernard's in Middleton from 1959 by Flad and Associates. Then we have Henry Slaby's St. Stephen the Martyr in Milwaukee from 1969, and St. Rita's Catholic Church in West Dallas by Mark Fowler from 1964. New materials, new types of glass. So a lot of questions about, again, the longevity of materials, how these buildings can be adapted. But I hope today's and tomorrow's sessions will really help us to think about how we can help preserve these buildings. They don't have to stay in religious use. They are adaptable. We can do different things with them, but they are so important to the identity of their communities. So I do encourage all of you to think about that as you move forward. Thank you.
I'm Stephen Marpole. I've founded Insight Consulting Architects in 2001, and we specialize in historic preservation, restoration, conservation, and we work quite a bit with buildings that a lot of folks just are not really, they're not willing to take on. They're a little bit riskier, and this is one of those. This is in the city of Madison. At Old Brick Botanical Garden, there is the Thai Pavilion. Who here has been to Madison and seen the Thai Pavilion? Okay, if you haven't seen it, please go do it. It's been restored now. But if you've seen it in the last few years, you've seen it in a condition that was a bit dilapidated. I'll get into that in a second, but it's now restored. It's not officially opened yet, but I would say before the winter sets in, I would go because it is really beautiful again, and we're very fortunate to have been a part of that. So again, this is three of the topics that we were going to be focusing on. I won't get into the LiDAR scanning so much, but this is definitely an international building. It was built in Thailand as a gift to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and then dismantled and shipped to Madison and reassembled on site at Old Brick Botanical Garden. And I'll talk a bit about our intervention techniques. This is the original drawings from the Thai architect that designed it. A tremendous amount of detail in drawing. I haven't seen the original drawings, but there's clearly a lot of craft in what went into this building, because a lot of the detail that you'll see was never really fully documented. A lot of it was left up to the artisans. This is a rendering of the concept of where it would be in Old Brick Park. And here you can see the pavilion as it's being built in various stages, and you can see some of the Thai artisans in September. They were pretty chilly, but in any case, this is the building as it is being put together. It's a very simple bit of construction: mahogany antique in wood, clay tile on the roof, lead flashings, etc. Very beautifully detailed and rendered. A lot of glass mosaic, a lot of gold leaf, a lot of lacquered paint. One of the things that we discovered as we were getting into the project was that there was a Thai sala or a Thai pavilion, or a sala Thai sala. I'll switch between all three different namings. Actually, formally, this is a royal Thai sala because it was a gift of the royal family of Thailand. As was the one in Hamburg, Germany. It is at there's a zoo in Germany, and it is on the grounds of the zoo. We discovered that it was actually under restoration as we were getting prepared to do this design work. I happened to be in Ireland for a conference, and I took the chance, and I actually made contact with the German architect and spent about a week with him crawling around this building as it was being restored to help learn about this archetype. So now I'll get into the restoration process. This is the view from from a drone, obviously, the larger image. But again, you can really see the beauty of the setting, the beauty of the building. And you can see, oh, I can see what's going on, okay. That the garden was designed to accept the building. It is a Thai garden, and it is in really a beautiful place. But you can see the lead flashings up at the top at the ridges. The lead was fairly lightweight. It actually was being curled up in the wind. It was not underturned under the wood, and they used ferrous nails. They used steel nails to tack it into place through galvanic action. The lead opened up and the nails disappeared, so it basically was just flapping in the wind, literally. Lots of little things like that were going on. One of the other issues that we ran into was the tile, which was designed and made for Thailand, did not fare very well in Wisconsin's climate. It absorbed water, and it just shaled apart. And you'll see some other images down the line. Like here, you can see where it's basically just falling apart at the edge. The beautiful glaze, just again, it did not hold up. Once water got in and we had some freeze-thaw cycles, it really started to deteriorate. So the tiles are hung on battens. There's a lug on the backside of the tile. So they're basically just held in place through gravity. So we're able to take apart various areas and see exactly what was going on. We were also able to get into the attics. You can see here where some of the tiles and exactly how they fell apart. Once we get up a little closer, we can see what was going on with the leads. That is teak, and again, teak is a very good wood, as we know, for weather-resistive properties, but it was starting to struggle, and miraculously, with all of the damage from the elements, there was almost no wood that needed to be replaced, only some slight restoration. You can see again here, you can see on the right-hand side, you can see where the fasteners had completely disappeared and the leads were failing. And also the decorative finishes were completely eroded. You can see that there's quite a bit of organic growth on the beams, at the ends of the beams as well. That's all gold leaf and some elaborative paint work. Again, you can see. So this is now living in Madison, Wisconsin. So it was designed and built for a Thai environment. Straight down rains, a lot of rain, but a very stable temperature. In Wisconsin, I think we all know that in a given day we can have a 50, 60 degree temperature swing, and certainly between the seasons we can have significant changes in temperature. Our precipitation comes sideways a lot of the times, and in the form of sleet and freezing rain and snow. And what was happening with this particular building was when it would snow with the open construction, the snow was getting into the attic. So what I mean by open construction is the tiles were hung on lugs, on battens, and there was no structural deck underneath them. So when you were in the attic, you would look at the underside of the clay tile, which is a fairly typical, traditional type of construction. But in Wisconsin, there would be a snow load that would develop in the attics throughout the winter, and then in the spring it would melt slowly, and it was basically a constant drip of water for a good long while, particularly in times when we would have a lot of snow. You can see what's happened in between the boards where water got into into the wood, and it started to deteriorate the finishes. So we needed to figure out a way to not lock down the attic. Some people would propose putting ice and water shield over the whole thing, or putting on a deck, or putting in plywood and doing that sort of thing. What we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that the building could still breathe, could still function as it was intended, but at the same time handle that bulk water, that snow and the water that could get into the attics. And again, more of the construction. You can see there's some staining and some deterioration of the finishes on the inside from, again, that constant source of water. So we ended up, this is under construction on the right-hand side. What we ended up doing is using basically Tyvek. Because the structural system was relatively open, what we did, and I'll show a detail of it in a second, is we installed a perforated metal deck to support the weather-resistive barrier. That would allow us to stop the bulk water from coming in while allowing water vapor to continue to pass through. Again, you can see some of the finishes here. There were glass mosaic tiles. This is the seal of the King of Thailand, and its deterioration was rather advanced. A lot of the mosaic tiles were missing. Those needed to be replaced. This is the underside from within the attic. You can see daylight, of course, but the lugs on the back side, you can see how the tile is hung on the battens. What we ended up doing is we ended up providing a method for having a weather-resistive barrier that could span in that open space. That was the primary challenge. So as part of our work, we did do a three-dimensional scan, and we identified, through the scan, we identified all of the tiles that were damaged. The areas in the green zones, those were nearly 100% deteriorated or at least compromised in some way. And then the ones of particular note were denoted with the red dots. And again, more of the same. You can see that there's quite a bit of deterioration. You can see that this was done in the wintertime. And so now we begin the process of our restoration. So we bid the job, we designed the job and bid it, we were fortunate enough to have a contractor from Spain who we had contact with and were very much interested in working on the project. They bid the job and won the job, and came and in the end helped us to execute really an excellent solution. So you can see the scaffold coming up, and in order to protect the workers from Wisconsin winters, because a lot of this work happened during the winter, to help protect the workers, but also to help protect the building and some of the materials that they were working with, they needed to be in an enclosed space. So it was a fully enclosed scaffold that was heated, obviously, throughout the winter. And again, now you can see some of the construction where you can see the battens that the tiles were hung on. There was quite a bit of debris and other things that had gotten in. And they are with the open construction. It was really beautifully built. It's just the challenge was it was built for Thailand, but now it's in Wisconsin. So there were some areas where we did need to have basically ice and water protection. We tried to limit that as much as we could, but the majority of the roof areas had what is basically, you can see it's Tyvek. We wanted it to be fairly, I'll say passive, not too aggressive of a membrane system, because we wanted for air to be able to move around it and through it. It's not a true membrane, it's just handling bulk water as much as anything and keeping snow out of the attics. So during the process, we did quite a bit of research and worked with American tile manufacturers. In the end, none of them were very much interested in bidding on this. We ended up using a European tile maker, and there was an awful lot of back and forth, finding the right tile, getting the right size, getting the right shape. The tiles have a slight barrel to them, they have a slight roll to them, and that needed to be designed and built, and then getting the color right and the finish right and all of that. It took us quite a while. You can see that the tiles are going in. There are 7 different custom pieces, and even we had several pieces that were constructed for valleys, so they could cut the valleys in. One of the areas that the roof tiles really struggled in our climate was in the smaller pieces in the valleys. So if you can see on the right, you can see where we use this hybrid tile shape in order to maintain a larger tile in the valley. So we have a straight closed valley, and there are no small pieces. That worked out really well. One of the things that was a major part of the original construction was it was the Thai artisans that came to rebuild it. They arrived on September 11th, 2001. So when they came here, you know, and everything was happening with 9/11, one of the things that the city of Madison did is they allowed, or they asked for people from the community, anybody interested, the workers, to put messages of peace and love on the back of the original tiles. Those tiles have now been, as they were removed, they've now been saved. They're in the collection at the garden. And we invited, as part of this process, we invited the community and others to come and do theirs. I did one as well. Did anybody here attend that? And okay, just a shot. This is basically a detail that we developed that shows some of the construction that we designed for this. It just helped the contractor. We didn't know who the contractor was going to be. Just helped them to understand the various pieces and how they were to go together. One of the things that we did is we, with the leads, we used a heavier lead, and we actually added those clip cleats on the sides, and they wrap around the backside, as you can see on the left, and they're attached so that they can't come loose again. See it better there? You can see they were all of the boards that were flashed with lead were all brought down to the ground, and the leads were installed, and then they were flown back up into position and put back where they belonged. And you can see some of the work with the lead flashings and the tiles as they're being completed now. And then I just have a few photos of the finished product. So I didn't talk much about the gold leaf process. I didn't talk about the painting process or any of the other interior conservation processes. I don't really have enough time to get into it, but the folks from Spain did a fantastic job. There were 2 separate studies done on the finishes and on the proper method and materials for the conservation. One pre-bid, and then once again with the contractor, we did the entire process over again so that we were certain that the contractor and we were on the same page as far as what was required for conservation. But all of the details, all of the boards, everything is back to the way it was intended as it was originally built. It took about 23 years for it to get into a condition where it needed to be restored, which is a little bit young, a little bit early for a building. but it is basically a piece of furniture out in the weather. And it's going to need to have constant attention and maintenance. And again, I'm very proud of the results. It's stunning to see all of these details come back to life. And there you are. So does anybody? So again, I didn't have much time to prepare for this, but I'd like, if I can, Matt, where are you?
Oh, I'm the new Matt.
Oh, hi, Matt.
Yeah, we have a few minutes.
Okay, any questions? I'd like to just open up to questions and answers. Is there anybody? Yeah.
Regarding the lead ridge,
Yes.
from below, it looked like it had a thickness to it. Is it sort of like turned?
Yeah, it's turned down. It's wrapped around and down so that it can't come free again. That was one of the goals, was to avoid the possibility of losing the lead in the wind again. Yes.
Was there a certain kind of paint that was used here? Because you were saying it's going to be out.
Yes, it was a paint that was actually suggested by the contractor. So we deviated from our spec based on their recommendation. I don't have the name, but I can get it for you. But it was a special paint. Hi, Amy. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were here. Amy Scanlon, if you can stand, or no? Okay, no. Amy is with the City of Madison, and she was our client on the project. So, did you know you were here? Yes.
Can you talk about the budget for it, where the funding came from?
Well, Amy can. She's right in front of you. A lot of it came from, pardon me?
The University of Wisconsin paid for the majority of it.
Yep. Yeah, it was part of the city's agreement with the university. So it was gifted to the University of Wisconsin. The University of Wisconsin didn't really have a place for it that they thought was appropriate, is my understanding of the process. And the city agreed to have it in the botanical garden, which was, I think, a masterful decision, because it's amazing where it's at. So seriously, if you get a chance, go to Old Brick before winter really sets in. I think it'll be beautiful. Yes?
Regarding the lead plastic, you just went quickly through that one photo with the nails. Is that copper, or is that brass nails? Or
Those are brass nails.
brass nails?
Yeah. Yes?
This is the first winter that this building after restoration will experience?
It hasn't seen a winter yet.
So this one will be...
This will be the first winter. And already, you know, as it is a piece of furniture in the weather, you can start to see where it's rained and there's been some atmospheric dirt and it's getting a little patina. I'm a lover of patina. I really am happy that it's going to do that, but right now you can get blinded by the gold and the details at certain times of day.
Sorry, I missed the address. Where is it?
Oh, it's at Old Brick Botanical Garden in Madison. It's on the east side off of, it's at that point, yes. Yes?
So you mentioned the other pavilion that was under restoration or construction in Concord.
Yes.
Has what has happened to buildings like this, has that changed how these sorts of buildings are built elsewhere?
No, really not. They're gifted, and there's only a few, is it 7, I think, in the world outside of Thailand that are gifted by the royal family. And they come as they are, essentially. So a sala Thai is, they're not explicitly, or they're not really a religious place. These are special because they are royal, and that gives them special status. But for the most part, they're like rest stops. They're a place to get out of the sun, to find comfort. And they're intended to deteriorate to a certain degree. When you see them in Thailand, you'll see that they are in various states of returning to the earth. But no. In Germany, they added German thinking to how their detailing went, as they did their restoration. We applied our experience and some of the things that we know work well in Wisconsin in this location. So there are flashings that the Thai artisans would never have dreamt of that are hidden and tucked away here to help protect against the weather. Yes?
Maybe I didn't hear, there was a question about the budget. What was the cost of the project?
I don't even know what the final cost was, and Amy, I don't know if you're willing to share.
Yeah, that's fine. The university provided $1.6 million,
Okay.
and there were some city add-on costs for sites, services, and things like that.
Yeah, so 1.6 million plus our services, so 1.6 million. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
So good morning, everyone. I'm very happy and honored to be here again for the second time here in Taliesin for this important event. And I want to say a big thank you to the Historic Preservation Institute of the SARUP, the University of Wisconsin, in the persons of Matt Jarrods and William Kruger that have invited me here. And Steve, where is Steve? Steve that has just presented this beautiful work. It was really amazing. And it was too amazing, actually, because I had to follow his proposal to present my work first, because the work that he has just presented was so colorful and gold and beautiful decorations and things like that. And so mine will be a little bit more subdued and sad, maybe. But I hope you will like it. So, actually, for the second time here, I'm a little bit off topic. That is a characteristic of mine since I was attending the middle school and the high school. So when I was given an essay to develop, usually the professor would say to me, you write very, very well, but you are off topic, bad grade. So I'm again off topic, but partially off topic. Because I'm anyway going to talk about a sacred place, but that is not in Wisconsin, just 7,000 miles away, and in China. And so it is, actually it was this happened in 2004. And it was part of a big project in which Italy, because actually I'm Italian and Greek, but I've lived the majority of my life in Italy. So I've worked a lot with the Italian Ministry of Culture. So it was part of a project in which Italy had a very important role. And Italy actually set up an institute for restoration in Beijing, in China. An incredible institute, Sino-Italian Institute for Restoration, 4 floors of fully equipped laboratories, scientific laboratories, restoration laboratories, architecture, and so on. And actually there we had the theory and the work in the laboratories. And then we had the field work. The field work that was in Henan, in the province of Henan, in a place, a very important place that is called Longmen, the Gate of the Dragon. This is the translation. And so let me start to show you the work. There you see One of the sides of the hills, I will show you more later, of this place that is called Longmen, we restored the so-called twin grottos that actually has nothing to do with twins. They are so different one from the other, but this is a Chinese concept probably of twin. And well, they have been, let's say, carved in a unique project, so probably that's why they are called them twins. They were actually carved in 700 AD, so Tang Dynasty. You see the institution involved in this project. So, of course, the People's Republic of China and the Republic of Italy. And the program was the training in the restoration and conservation of the Chinese cultural heritage through the support of the China National Institute of Cultural Property of Beijing. And this site was included in 2000 in the list of UNESCO. And so here is, you see Beijing up there. Then you see the province of Henan, the prefecture of Luoyang. We'll see there, the prefecture of Luoyang. So it's 500 miles south of Beijing. Luoyang was the closest city to the Longmen site. Actually, we were told that we were going in a city, in Italian we say provincial city, probably in English is not like that, but I was thinking about a small city that was actually 4 million of people, of inhabitants, and also it was within the 10 most polluted cities in China, the first 10 polluted cities, most polluted cities in China. And so actually very close both to Luoyang and to Longmen, there is the Yi River that actually comes from, actually it's a tributary of the Yellow River that we have all heard about. And here you can see a video, a general video. So this is the Western Hill. So 2,300 grottos, 110,000 Buddhas, 80 pagodas, 2,800 epigraphs, and the let's say the historic period goes from 386 AD to 1269 AD. So a very, very big span of time. Here we are seeing the big Buddha, the tallest one, the biggest one. But actually, as you see, we have 110,000 Buddhas. So here we have the Eastern Hill and the Western Hill. And okay. So 12 kilometers far from Luoyang, the city of Luoyang. So we have these two hills that flank the Yi River. And the slopes of the west and east hill become very steep and cliff-like when they approach the river valley. And actually are made of limestone. So it's an outcrop, huge outcrop of limestone that it's actually soft and easily carved. So this started to be an important place since the Northern Wei dynasty moved the capital in actually Luoyang. And so they started carving these grottos. Some of them were already grottos, and they were carved more, but some others, they started from zero to open these grottos. And of course, there are big grottos, but also small niches. And Longmen grottos, as I told you, started during the Northern Wei dynasty. And probably before that, some small-scale religious practice occurred in this area. And from the moment the Northern Wei dynasty moves to Luoyang, the capital, of course, this started developing more and more and marking the official large-scale beginning of the site as we see it today. So you can see the number of grottos, and small and big grottos. Here it's the historical context, starting from the Eastern Wei and Northern Qi dynasties. And the grottos that we have restored with my students, I had 17 students. It's in part of the Tang dynasty, the period 618 and 907. And this era marked the peak of artistic achievement in Longmen. And the Tang dynasty was a golden age for Chinese culture, and the grottos saw significant expansion. The carvings from this period, when Chinese Buddhism has begun to flourish again, are noted for their intricate details, realism, and the introduction of more secular themes alongside traditional Buddhist motifs. And then we have the post-Tang dynasty, and of course, the pace of construction slowed significantly, but anyway, it has continued to be a very important place of worship and pilgrimage. So here you can see the Yue River and the two hills. The western hill is the one with the majority of the grottos. And here we can see actually where there is this square, the yellow square. This is the tallest of the Buddhas, of the 110,000 Buddhas. And it is the Fengxianxi, the temple of the ancestors. And initially there was a roof. There was a roof that then has collapsed. And it was actually worked in 3 years, in the period of 3 years, between 672 and 675. We have a square of 100 feet, and this huge Buddha that is actually 55 feet. But then, this is the tallest, and little by little, we go to smaller figures of Buddha until we have these really tens of thousands of tiny Buddhas covering huge walls, small repetitive Buddhas. Also, this is very, very Chinese. And here it is. You can see all these are small Buddhas carved on the wall. Now, just very few areas, in very few areas, you can see the polychromy, the original polychromy. Of course, like everything in the antiquity, it was covered by very vivid colors that, of course, have been, through the weathering and the decay, have been lost. So only few areas, but here I'm just showing you another complex of grottos, that is the Datsu caves, in which you see how polychrome were these sculptures. And of course, these probably are not the original colors, because they were restored every a certain number of decades, let's say. They were restored and repainted. This was a common practice in everywhere in the world, and particularly in China. In some cases, they keep doing that. Yeah, here we see, let's say, a kind of too much repainting of a monument, and this is what actually try to teach and to let's say to give them to teach them a different approach to the monuments, and so not to have a situation like the one that you see, because we have this Buddha of the 11th century that has been totally repainted. But I mean, in Europe we have nothing to be jealous of, because if you see this one in Spain, I mean, on the right you see the result of a restoration, let's say, that is horrible. So we cannot criticize too much the others. So about the recent history for the grottos, we know that during the Cultural Revolution, during Mao Zedong, many of the works of art have been destroyed, and actually you see the poster there that says destroy the old world and create a new one. So they took it literally, and they started destroying a lot of works of art. They tried to make an assault and to destroy also the statuary in Longmen. But fortunately, we know that the local people and farmers that knew about the value of this site, they opposed resistance, and so actually they were not able to destroy anything. And I also heard, even though it wasn't said very clearly 20 years ago, that the director of the site at that time opposed himself a resistance. So they were going to consider him a kind of hero, even though not yet officially. Maybe nowadays, yes. But at that time, it was. I heard about that. So fortunately, was intact, was left intact, and nothing happened. And so here we see the Western Hill, and there we can see our work site. It was such a beautiful place, and there you go, just in front of the river. Here is when the construction of the fence started, of the fence around the work site. These are the two grottos, and here is the moment in which we arrive, the very first day. So unloading the car to bring all the materials. We started actually in today, 20 years ago, we're still working there because we started in August, as soon as the rainy season ceased. So there were not many rains in the 3 months of fall, 3 months that we worked there. So here, just before starting with my students, here is in an advanced step of the work with some panels that we put outside, so in order to give some information to the community, the local community, but also to the many students that were visiting this very important site. So, Twin Grottos, Shangiaodong is the name in Chinese. The side fence with informative panels. And then we go inside. And these are the two grottos, the facade of the two grottos, the outer part. And we have, you can distinguish the 4 guardians carved, 2 on each side of the entrances, but only 3 actually survived, and survived in a bad shape. As you can see, they had been restored in the past, so some arms or other parts of their body was reintegrated with some materials that actually were not so compatible. And here it is, the North Grotto, in which we have the Buddha, of course, disciples and bodhisattvas, I mean, part of the Buddhist Olympus. And this is the other grotto, the south one, in which we have just 3 huge sculptures, big sculptures. And then the walls were just carved with these hundreds of small Buddhas. So this was a training work site, a training work. So the students started all the phases, the preliminary phases for the restoration. So they started taking the pictures, and then, of course, discussing about all the alterations and degradations that were on the surfaces, but also structural problems. And I will talk about these. Examining the surfaces in order to better understand what were the alterations that we could find. As you can see, they're doing the thematic maps in which are indicated here, are part of the thematic maps, in which are indicated the areas that are affected by some of the alterations. So this was part of the training program. And the red lines there are actually cracks, some cracks, important cracks in the structure, and we will talk about them. Of course, we had also some scientists, because you know as well that restoration is a multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary activity. So we work with scientists, biologists, chemists, architects, engineers, and so on. So this is the moment in which we do the sampling in order to examine in laboratory and about, of course, the material itself, from a petrographic point of view, what kind of stone it was, the natural stone, and of course the products of the alterations, salts or some also biological growth. And then, of course, we try to analyze the pigments that we would find very small areas in which the pigment was survived, not the original one, as I told you. Here is the discussion after having obtained the result of the analysis. Here we also, here you can see the X-ray, XRF, the X-ray fluorescences that we did in order to find the nature of the pigments and some other byproducts, because we could find some elements, chemical elements. And so, for example, the red that we can find here, there, it's mercury sulfide. That means it's cinnabar. Cinnabar was a very precious color since the antiquity, so has been widely used also in China. Here we have a colorimetric device in order to check before and after the restoration the result of the color of the surface. And here is the killer. The killer, of course, is the most important of the agents of decay. Water. Water from everywhere. And actually, this is how we found the floor of the grottos as soon as we arrived. So, before we started the restoration, many years before, had been done a survey about the structural problems, the cracks. And actually, they found over 20 water cracks and over 50 water seeping spots. So water was coming from, of course, the visible cracks that had been actually restored before our restoration with cement, that is not okay, and with some resins, synthetic resins, that we removed because actually we wanted to remove whatever was not compatible with the original material. And but the problem are some, let's say, hair cracks meaning some very thin cracks that are not visible. And anyway, from there, the water was coming in. And the water was coming from everywhere. Was coming from above, as you can see, a lot of trees, so roots and probably some paths through the outcrop of the limestone that were arriving until the grottos. So it was impossible to control the entrance of the water. For this, it was necessary to do a very precise survey before the restoration, but was not done, unfortunately. So the water from above and the water from below, because this was, the river was flooding. And in recent times, a dam was built, so they were controlling actually the flooding of the water, but sometimes would happen. And then another, let's say, agent of decay are the anthropic factors. So whatever is done directly or indirectly from men. So these grottos actually have been used throughout the centuries, of course, as a worship place, but also as a shelter for refugees and soldiers during the time of wars, and also from pilgrims that were going there, and they were actually looking for a place where to sleep and to eat and to burn fires, of course. Another problem are some very recent interventions, and actually just above the grotto, they built a concrete boardwalk. And we know that cement is not the most appropriate material to use combined with historical materials. Because as you can see, the white efflorescences, so actually the byproducts of cement are terrible, terrible salts, sodium-based salts, sulfate-based salts, and they do a lot of damage. So entering the porosity, and then during the crystallization, breaking the pores of the stone. Then some other direct anthropic factors. When we found them, I thought it was like a very important writing, but actually it was like John Loves Mary done by tourists. This was told by my students. And then some other, let's say, direct anthropic factors, that is the removal of all the faces, all the heads of the Buddhas. It was not very clear if it was done because of, let's say, a moment of iconoclasty. Okay, so they removed this for some reasons. They removed it, or because, as we see here, because of a problem of theft. So many of these heads probably ended up in a private collection somewhere in the world, in Europe or the United States. So the majority of the heads, as you can see, had been removed. And here as well, just one had survived. Another indirect, in this case, anthropic factor is that very close, let's say behind the hill, there was a highway and there were trains going back and forth, thousands of them every day during the Mao's period. And actually those even, let's say, far, but they were provoking vibrations that at the end would have some very bad results on the stone, so creating cracks and having some parts of the stone sliding and falling. So here we see as we found the surfaces completely wet. There you go, from everywhere, and suddenly from one point the water was seeping. Here is a general view. And actually we see that the water was also somehow, maybe a crack was blocking, so was changing the preferential area of flowing. There is, you see one that actually the water is flowing. And this is the facade in which you can see everything. Biological colonization, you can see mosses and algae and cyanobacteria and salts. So it was really not anymore readable, the surface and the reliefs. There you go. This is the condition before our restoration. The main problem was actually the salts that were deposited, carbonatic, so calcium carbonate that was forming on the areas where the water was flowing on. And you can see the rippled incrustations. And here you see that we would find and removed like 5, 6 layers of these incrustations because of the flowing of the water and the deposition of the salts on the surface, on the surfaces. Here we have also the black crust because of the pollution. There were industries around, and as I told you, still when I was there was the most polluted area. Black crust because of the pollution. And here in the grotto we see the ceiling with some crust, not because of the pollution, but because of the salt. The salt because of the fire that they were actually burning when they were using these grottos as a shelter. So completely black. And then we had some structural problems, as you can see in the detailed picture. So some exfoliations of separation of layers of the stone. And again, here you can see some scales, the formation of scales and flakes that we had, of course, to fix. And here we had, as you can see, an important crack that actually was ready to slide and to fall. So we actually worked on it, as you can see from below. Now, this is the first step of our restoration, that was to apply the biocide, that is the liquid that kills the living organism, like the algae and cyanobacteria and so on. Was the first thing to do. And then we started doing some tests for the cleaning. The students who used all the kind of methods, cleaning methods, starting from the mechanical, very simple mechanical methods like a scalpel, and also chemical cleaning. So applying it, as you can see, through the use of cellulose pulp as a supportant of this liquid that we are applying in order to remove the substances that we wanted to remove. And again, some images of the work that was done. We have used different type of chemical cleaning, like the resins, the ions exchange resins. And here are some results of the cleaning, as you can see, with the cleaning tests. So, as I told you, they used the scalpel, the very simple scalpel, hammer and chisel wherever was needed to remove some incrustations. We also used some compressed air tools, the vibroengraver, because they had to use all this different range of tools and acquire manual skills that they already had, because we had worked in the laboratory previously. Micropneumatic hammers, the ultrasonic delta scaler, the one that the dentists are using in order to remove some incrustations, and also the micro sandblasting. During the cleaning work, we also discovered, because we were told that this was very important, because it was a Taoist inscription that was strange to be found in a Buddhist worship place. There you see some previous restoration that we actually kept. This was a cement, actually, the half of the head of the Buddha that was in good conditions anyway, and we kept it. And then we started the consolidation, so locally with some resins, trying to fix the problems of flaking and scaling. For the big crack, we filled it with epoxy resin, and also some. We also found under many layers of incrustation some gold leaves, not original, of course, not original, but we kept them. Then we tried, but in an empirical way, to impede the water to get into the grotto. But it was like a battle with a dragon. So we're not going to win, because here it had to be done a very serious survey before doing that, but we tried. So we used the silicone rubber, and we also left some small pipes, plastic pipes. Actually, some of them worked, but some of them not. So we just tried. We also filled the gaps with appropriate mortar, so using very compatible materials. And then we did some tests for the protection, the final protection. So we used different materials, and at the end we found that only one was appropriate because was not changing the aspect and the color of the stone. This is an important factor. But also another important factor is that the liquid that we apply, the protection that we apply, is not going to block the porosity. This is the most important thing. So to leave the water to get out in case it's vapor, but not permitting the water to get into the porosity. So here are some pictures before and after our cleaning. Before and after. It's been three and a half months of hard work with my students, so 18 people working on this. Here is before and after. Before and after. And we also gave them a procedure, because this is a very important part. Nowadays, preventive conservation, if it is more important than the restoration, direct restoration itself. Because as we see, since the 18th century, and also in 19th century, it is said that it is the most important thing is to prevent, instead of acting directly on an artifact, because whatever restoration is done, even in the most delicate, anyway implies a stress for the material. So it is better to try to slow down the effects of the decay, okay? So to have less and lesser restoration, direct restoration. So we give them all this advice. And here we are. This is the end of our work and the picture with my student. So thank you. Thank you.